So, what if everything you were taught about money growing up was, well, wrong? That's the core question behind Robert Kiyosaki's legendary book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This book isn't just about finance. It's a total takedown of the old school path of go to school, get a good job, and save your money. It's really a story about two fathers, two very different ways of looking at money, and how that one choice can change, well, everything. Let's dive into the lessons that have shaken up the financial world. And boom, here it is, the central conflict right from the start. On one side, you have Kiyosaki's biological father, his poor dad. Super educated, but he always said that the love of money is the root of all evil. But then you have his best friend's dad, his rich dad, who flipped that completely on its head. He believed the lack of money is the root of all evil. And that one single disagreement, it pretty much defined everything Kiyosaki would go on to learn about building wealth. All right, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at these two dads and their different paths. Then we'll get into three big focus areas from the book: the huge gap in their mindsets, the one golden rule for getting rich, and how the wealthy play the money game differently. And we'll wrap it all up with the big choice the book asks every single one of us to make. So the whole setup of the book is really simple, but honestly, it's pretty profound. Kiyosaki had his poor dad, a guy with a PhD who was the head of education for the state of Hawaii, but, and this is the kicker, he struggled with money his entire life. And then there was his rich dad. This was his best friend's father, who dropped out of school in the 8th grade, but went on to build a massive business empire. I mean, just look at this comparison. It totally flips the script on what we're all told, right? Poor dad did everything right by the book. He studied hard, got degrees from amazing schools, landed a safe government job. Rich dad, he dropped out. But one man died leaving behind a pile of bills, and the other became one of the richest men in Hawaii. This just hammers home the central point. Going to school to get good grades and learning how to manage money are two completely different skill sets. So you see, the difference in what happened to them wasn't really about their jobs or their report cards. It all came down to mindset. Rich Dad's biggest lesson was that wealth doesn't start in your bank account. It starts in your head. The way you think is literally the number one thing that determines your financial future. Think about this. Poor Dad's go-to response whenever he saw something he wanted but couldn't buy was simple: I can't afford it. And that was it. End of story. But Rich Dad saw that phrase as just, mental laziness. It's like an off switch for your brain. The moment you say it, you shut down all creative thinking and just accept defeat. Rich Dad, on the other hand, absolutely forbade those words. He made his son reframe the whole thing. Instead of a dead-end statement, he had to turn it into a question: how can I afford it? Now that little tweak, that tiny change, does something incredible. It forces your brain to turn on. It gets you thinking, problem solving, and looking for ways to make it happen. It's not about buying every little thing. It's about giving your financial mind a workout. And here's the big takeaway for you. The words you say to yourself, your internal dialogue, that stuff shapes your reality. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, oh, I can't afford that, just stop. Force yourself to ask, okay, how can I afford that? You might not get the answer right away, but you've just opened the door to possibility. And believe me, that is the most important first step you can take. Okay, so if your mindset is the software, what's the actual operating system for wealth? Rich Dad was convinced there was one super simple rule you absolutely had to get. It's not some complex formula, but it's where almost everyone gets it wrong. First things first, you have to know what an asset is. And forget all those complicated definitions you learned in school. Rich Dad made it brutally simple. An asset is anything that puts money into your pocket. That's it. Think of it like a rental property that gives you a check every month, or stocks that pay you dividends. And you guessed it, a liability is the exact opposite. It's anything that takes money out of your pocket. We're talking car payments, credit card debt, and here's the one that gets people, often the very house you live in. With its mortgage, taxes, and repairs, it's constantly pulling money away from you. It all comes down to one thing: which way is the cash flowing? And this right here is the fundamental difference in what people do with their money. The rich spend their time and energy buying assets. The poor and the middle class, they spend their lives buying liabilities that they've been tricked into thinking are assets. They buy the bigger house, the fancier car, all thinking they're building wealth, when in reality, they're just digging a deeper and deeper financial hole for themselves. This kind of behavior is exactly what creates what the book calls the rat race. You know the drill. You get up, you go to work to pay your bills. Then you get a raise. Great. But what do? You increase your spending. Maybe you buy a bigger house or a nicer car. But now your bills are even higher, so you're trapped. You have to work even harder just to stay afloat. It's this endless, exhausting cycle. So, the action item here is so simple, but it can literally change your life. Your number one goal should be to use the money you earn to buy things that will earn you more money. So take a hard look at your own finances. Is your money flowing out to pay for liabilities, or is it flowing out to buy assets that will one day send even more money flowing back to you? All right, this leads us right into our third big idea. You have to understand that building wealth is a game, and it has rules. The rich don't just work harder, they understand the systems, especially when it comes to things like taxes and corporations, and they use those rules to their advantage. Rich Dad always said that income taxes were originally designed to punish the wealthy, but the rich were smart. They were financially literate. They didn't just sit back and take it. They found perfectly legal ways to minimize how much tax they paid. And the result? The real weight of the tax burden ended up falling on the poor and the middle class, the very people who didn't understand the rules of the game they were playing. This right here is probably the biggest legal loophole there is. Look at the cash flow. If you're an employee, the order is you earn money, you immediately pay taxes on it, and then you try to spend what's left. But a corporation completely flips that. The business earns money, then it spends money on all its expenses, salaries, travel, you name it, and then it pays taxes on whatever profit is left over. It is a massive, massive advantage. So how do you get this savvy? Well, Rich Dad called it financial IQ. And it's not just one thing. It's made up of 4 key areas. You need to understand accounting so you can actually read the numbers. You need to know about investing so you can make your money work for you. You need to understand markets, supply and demand, to spot opportunities. And finally, you have to know the law so you can use things like corporations to protect your wealth. The key advice here is to mind your own business. And your business isn't your job, that's just your profession. Your real business is your asset column. The book isn't telling you to go quit your job tomorrow. No, the idea is to keep your day job to pay the bills, but to pour all your extra time, energy, and money into building up that column of income-producing assets. That is your real ticket to freedom. You know, when you put it all together, the mindset, the assets versus liabilities, the financial IQ, it all brings us back to where we started. This book isn't some get-rich-quick manual. It's really about making a fundamental choice about who you're going to learn from and how you're going to train the most powerful asset you'll ever have, your own mind. In the end, it really boils down to 2 paths. You can follow the advice we all hear, go to school, play it safe, hope for the best, which, for a lot of people, is a direct path into the rat race. Or you can make the choice to become financially educated. You can learn the rules of the money game, start thinking like an investor, and start building that asset column, piece by piece. The lessons from Rich Dad and Poor Dad lay out a really clear choice. And it's not just about money, is it? It's about how you approach problems, how you learn, and how you decide to live your life. So the book leaves all of us with one simple, powerful question that I'll leave with you. On your own financial journey, who are you going to listen to?